But a lot of times men will give you that ego shit where women are not as egotistical straight up, and certainly not in that way as expressed in the gym, and they just oftentimes can just be better coached. Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization, and today's topic is male versus female training differences. How does training work differently, specifically for size and strength, between males and females? Now, I've never met a female in real life, just read a lot of books about them, so this is all theoretical. But we will see what we can do, and I think we have a total of 11 differences that I could come up with. Certainly there are a few others. I think these are the main ones, and the design of this talk is sort of to give you some perspective on, okay, in the real world, how do differences actually reflect different programming requirements, different abilities, and different recommendations for females versus males. So almost the ideal target audience for this is like you, Mr. Hubby, who writes your wife's training program and she comes with you to the gym. If you know this video back to front after it's done, you could just do a lot better of a job programming for your wife so she inevitably starts to push even your boundaries. And all of a sudden, you don't know who's the man anymore. And you're like, hey, Karen, can you wash the dishes tonight? She's like, no, Frank, you're going to wash the dishes. And you're like, yes, ma'am. And then, sorry, but don't watch videos like this. You won't make your wife too jacked and too strong to control. Anyway, wives, girlfriends, all jokes, let's get to it. So, number one, difference. These are not ranked in order of importance or anything, just a list. Intensity handling, which means that females can usually do more reps with any given percentage of the 1 rep max. So if you throw 80% of 1RM on the bar for 100 males versus 100 females, females will tend to crank out a few more, maybe 2 to 4 reps with that 80% of 1RM than the males would, which is kind of interesting. Means that if you go on percentage programs for males and females, programs are like, oh, do 82.5% for 3x3. For females, this often leaves them further away from failure than with the males, making the program more relatively intense, relatively effortful for males, and could throw some things off. So just something to consider. And interestingly enough, females take less of a beating set to set from high intensities. So for example, you take the average 100 average males, 100 average females that are in the gym training regularly. And if you get the males in and do, 6 sets of 4, 6 sets of 5 in the squat, gee, by the end, the males are going to be doing very little weight. They're going to be really, really beat up just all over. It's what a terrible, terrible amount of fatigue imposed. But females will be able to kind of just keep doing sets of 5 and maybe drop to 4 by the last one, often with the same weight. They can just handle that fatigue way better. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're designing programs with the intent to push both males and females as far as possible. Now, one thing that you could keep in mind the rest of this video, should have said this first, is if you have a female training partner and you're yourself male or vice versa, these are all things to keep in mind. So you can change the programs a little bit at the margin, still do a lot of the same training, but understand how to adjust to make sure the training is good for everyone. You don't want someone being overtrained, someone being undertrained. You want to make little tiny adjustments to make the best for both. Next, rest times. Females typically recover much faster between sets. So if you're programming for someone and you're doing something that's like, oh yeah, 3 minutes rest, like a lot of women will rest 45 seconds to be completely recovered on all 4 factors. The muscle itself can do more than 5 reps productively. The cardio is no longer limiting. They're not even out of breath anymore. They feel strong. They feel ready to go. Synergists are all good. So technically by our 4-factor rest time checklist, they're already good to go 45 seconds in, and they spend another couple minutes just kind of looking around. And then they say shit on Reddit like, hey, my program is really boring. I have to rest a lot. Guys can't relate. Really, I think you need the rest. Just be patient. And it's a cool comment to make to a woman on Reddit to help her psychologically get through training. But another thing you could say is, hey, maybe as soon as you're ready to go, you can just go, and thus you don't have to be in the gym for forever. So that's really cool. The big part of that whole thing is the female on Reddit. That's never happened. Come on now. Scott, the video guy, do females go on Reddit? And Scott is biologically a female as well. All right. So another thing is if you train with a woman on the rest times thing and you're a training partner, you might have a situation where she every now and again goes 2 sets for your 1. Like my wife and I, we train on occasion together. Like when we go on vacations, we'll just go kind of set for set. And a lot of times she's like, are you ready? I'm like, she's like, I'll just do another set and then rest and then you can go. And I'm like, yes, please, for the love of God. So that's another handy thing to try out. Next up, per session volumes. Females can do volumes within a single session, a single workout that would crush most men, right? That doesn't mean per muscle group. Typically anywhere between 10 to 12, 10 to 15 sets per muscle group per session is probably the best for females as well. You don't want to go over that. That's the high end for both males and females. But the total session volume, the total number of exercises and muscle groups a female can train in the gym and not leak into junk volume is actually much higher than that of a male's, and certainly in my experience, and the literature can confirm this as well. So what ends up happening is, if you're writing a workout for a female and you're like, here's 3 exercises, you got to do this advanced muscle group split, come into the gym 6 times a week, and she does the 3 exercises, each with 8 sets or whatever, and she's like, so can you just stay here and do more? And you're like, no way, sister, you need rest. Like, no, false, just does not need rest. On the other hand, if you take a female program and apply it to a male, about the 40th working set later, you're gonna be vomiting blood in the bathroom, you can't see anymore, and your girlfriend's like, hey, your set's up, we got 10 more fucking exercises to do. You're like, hey, this is crazy. So just remember that females can handle more. They can just keep being productive in the gym for, I don't know, typical males, somewhere between 20 and 25 sets per session. For a pretty strong person, it's like, that's it. That's all you can do. 20 to 25 working sets per session. Doesn't even matter the muscle group much after that point. It's all downhill after that. You should probably do another session. Whereas if you're female, 30 to 35 or even more sets can totally be done by a female in many cases, and they're not even overly fatigued at the end, and they're still having productive sets. So definitely something to keep in mind there. Number 4 difference is in weekly frequencies. Typically, females can recover faster and more completely in less time, and thus are able to productively have a higher training frequency than males. It's not a night or day difference. It's a little bit subtle, but nonetheless, I would say a good rule of thumb to use is to assume 1 more frequency per muscle group for females than males as a good place to start the program, and then auto-regulate from there, see how things respond. So for example, if a good bench press program is 2 times a week benching for a male, a female bench press program could probably start at 3 times a week benching, and the female would recover very well and not spend a lot of downtime like, okay, I'm completely recovered, I'm totally ready to go, it's Tuesday, but I don't bench again until Thursday or Friday. Like, I just do it tomorrow and then do it again Friday. So it's one of these things where if you're training females, got to make sure to intersperse their sessions such that the frequency is maybe 1 more time per muscle group than a male counterpart would have, and then it tends to make the program work a little bit better for females. Number 5 difference is in accumulation lengths. I would say there's about a week difference on average that I've seen, sometimes even 2. So if after 4 weeks of progressively harder training, the average male needs a deload, call it 4 to 8. After 5 to 10 weeks, the average female needs a deload. So if you have a female training partner, it's week 5 and week 6 is deload, you could be like, damn girl, can't wait for that deload. She's like, I could just keep training. You're like, what the hell? Women can just fucking keep going, and gee whiz, there's a sex joke in there somewhere. I've never really had the sex in real life. Scott, the video guy, is having sex for longer good?
No, it's a race.
It is a race. Is that why you have all those trophies in your room? My man, it's about getting there quick. In any case, so if you're programming for females, or as I like to call them, sisters in steel versus brothers in iron, of course, standard nomenclature, just know that you can tack on an extra week or 2 to your assumed periodization paradigm for them for the mesocycle, and they're probably going to be good to go. And it's not just probably good to go. It's better than that, because yeah, they could deload pretty often with their male counterparts, but then they're like, not so much wasting a week, but they could have crammed in more productive training before taking a break, right? It's like if you're like a really productive employee at your job and you're just like working crazy on this project, it's Friday morning and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to finish this by the weekend. It's going to be great. And your boss comes in, he's like, all right, Chuck, let's go to lunch. I'm taking everyone to early lunch and then you guys get the day off. And you're like, what? I was going to finish the work. It's like, we'll get it next Monday. It's all right. It's like, yeah. You got people that are really talented and productive. You just leave them fuck alone in office. They make great things. That's how Mr. Nick Shaw, CEO of RP, keeps me in an office. And it says, one day I'll see the sun. He promises me that the sun is very bright. It's like a star, but bigger, he says. I don't know. I just go to work. In any case, same idea with females. It'd be weird to have them deload every 4th week, like a standard all powerlifting programs, for example, if they're like totally good to go for 4, 5, or 6 weeks before needing a deload. So make sure to keep that in mind. Next is axial and systemic fatigue costs are lower for females, right? On average, due to a variety of different factors, by the way. I won't really be getting into factors here much. It's another discussion. But this is the in practice differences that you'll see in real life. So things like squats, overhead presses, deadlifts, bent rows. Females can do lots of those, more than males, more sets per week than males, and not have to pay this insanely burdensome axial and systemic fatigue cost of just being beat to shit. There's only so many squats and benches and deads and cleans you can do in a program as a male until your body just collapses on you. You can't get out of bed. For females, they can do a lot of hardcore shit and still be like, oh, this is totally fine. I'm doing great. And the great thing about these exercises is females, as we get to in a bit, are a little bit more resistant to hypertrophy. They don't gain as much muscle as males do, but luckily they can use much more raw stimulus magnitude high movements like barbell rows, like pull-ups, like squats, like overhead presses, etc. And typically males would have to incorporate more isolation moves after some compounds, more machine and seated moves, less raw stimulus magnitudes. They have to do a few more sets and focus on the mind-muscle connection a bit, kind of, I don't want to say cheat their way to gains, but kind of navigate around this insane fatigue caused by these very effective but very fatiguing exercises. For females, they're just as effective, relatively speaking, but less fatiguing. So you'll see a lot of programs that you could design and are designed well for females, which you would read it, you're like, there's no way anybody can actually do this. It says 10 sets of squats, followed by 4 sets of stiff-legged deadlifts, followed by 4 sets of overhead press. I would just be dead at this point. They're like, you see a woman do it, and you're like, I guess there she goes. And after every 45 seconds rest, she's like, I feel great. Let's do it again. And all right, very good. 45 seconds of rest and you feel great to do it again. Sounds like Scott the Video Guy. Talent, folks. Look it up in the dictionary if you can read. Good God. All right. So if you're programming for females and a female has like a weak point of like hamstrings or glutes or shoulders or whatever, feel free to scoot in a bit more of those raw stimulus, insane compound heavy barbell movements because you might need them to help her grow, but also because she can handle it. And with males, don't try that shit. You're going to kill somebody. All right. Next up is relative effort. So far, all these have kind of been like female advantages, so to speak. Like they can just do more. They're just kind of better. Disadvantage coming up, number 7 here, relative effort. Females on average do not push themselves psychologically as hard on any given set as males do. They just won't go as close to their actual technical failure point and misconstrue their failure point as much earlier than it actually is. Not a ton earlier, but notably enough different for males where it's relatively obvious if you've been in the gym a few times. And this can be remediated in many women, not all, to a large extent, sometimes a total extent where they're caught right up to the males or even go beyond, but sometimes at least a bit of the way through. This can be remediated through coaching and through self-work. The coaching part is they have another female coach, let's pretend, with them that's been around the block, that's trained fucking hard. And it can be like, hey, Stacy, how many reps in reserve was that last set? Stacy's like, 2. Be like, bullshit. How many reps did you do? 12? Yeah. Start another set. Stacy gets to 12, looks over, and the female coach is like, 2 more. And she's like, yeah, do more, shut up. She does it. She's like, oh my God, I could do it. And she does 2 more after that. Oh my God, it was 4 IR the whole time. Well, now you learn. Now next time, when you doubt yourself that it's almost close to failure, do a couple more reps. If you're female listening to this, unlikely, we do have 1.5 females as our audience, then push yourself a little further maybe, unless you got it all dialed in up here and then you don't need that shit. Speaking of dialing it in, I said self-work, inner self-work. That's, you can be coached to do a lot of things. Someone else present there can push you and you can sort of let them be kind of like you're a vessel for their information and executive decision-making. But after they're gone and you're training by yourself, you're like, yeah, when no one pushes me, I just do back to what I normally do. So you can meditate on this a little bit, especially in the gym as a female, and tell yourself, I know that I'm capable of more. And I know that maybe genetically, because I'm female, I'm not advantaged to just fall into being a psycho and doing more. So I'm going to try to push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone each time, try to see how rarefied the air is up there in failure world. Failure world. It's like an amusement park, which your entire life is videoed in front of you, and you get to realize how much of a fucking failure you are. Fuck you, Dad. Jesus Christ. In any case, if you do some thinking about this as a female, you can realize I may be able to push harder, and you can discover you can, and it's super fucking empowering. So that's just on there to consider. It does need to be admitted to be addressed. So if you happen to be a modern day feminist, sweet, and you're recalcitrant in any accusation of gender-based differences, and you're just like, no way, women work just as hard, I do have a gambit for you. Are typically males or females more compassionate? Are typically males or females better with children, especially young children? Who makes a better kindergarten teacher on average, a male or a female? Like at some point it starts to get ridiculous and it's obvious there are gender differences, and they're totally cool. We're just a bit different. There's no better or worse, it's just different, right? Some people say, well, women can be just as tough as men. Like, hold on, is toughness like the best thing in the world? Like, is like Albert Einstein known for his toughness? Like, that's ridiculous. There's tons of other great things you can be. Tough is just the stupid male brute version of seeing the world. So if you're cool with it, understanding that some people are different, even forget gender for a sec. Some people just don't push as hard as others. Your boy right here, I fake all my shit. Everybody knows I don't go to failure. I think that's all 9 RIR. But I do some self-work. I go to 7 RIR. I feel like I went beyond failure in all as well. So it's just something to think about for yourself, and push yourself as hard as you can, and understand that if you're female, you may be encountering some kind of guardrails that you can break through potentially. In any case, some of this, if you fix it, can really adjust all the other factors we talked about earlier. So for example, one of the reasons that females typically are able to do set after set after set of high intensity work better than males is because their relative effort isn't as high. So actually they're saving a lot on the tank that they might not even be consciously aware of. So if you get a female and my new course on how to get females, see? If you are in the position of coaching a female and over the 6 months or so, you work collaboratively with her, and she ends up becoming like a fucking demon woman, Wonder Woman type shit, and really knowing how to push herself, her ability to crank out set after set after set heavy might decline. It was, oh shit, did we break her? No, you turned her efforts more effective per set, which means her total volumes can come down, use of high RSM movements can come down, and her training can just a little bit start to look a little bit more male-like, simply because the reason half of those female adjustments are made is because that relative effort is lower. So if the relative effort comes up, a lot of the other female training stuff will come up as well. Some stuff probably won't change much. Accumulation to deload paradigms don't change much, because after a few days off, it doesn't really matter how hard females work, they just heal faster than men. So there's some stuff that doesn't change, but on average, it makes the training a little bit more similar between the two genders or sexes. I've never had anyone cogently describe to me the difference between those two, but the more I say, the more I'll get canceled by either alt-right incels or SJW insane people. Hello, YouTube. Number 8, technique and trainability. Back to female advantage, so to speak. Generally speaking, females have better technique to begin with. You can show a female how to do a technique and she goes, okay, and she just does the thing right the first time. And with men, you show them how to do it and they're like, oh, sweet. And instantly they're I was gonna say AI, but their natural intelligence processor is like, how do I change this movement while learning it to something stupider and more egotistical? Like, I bet I can do this and not have to work as hard, but also hurt my back. So a lot of times women are just more trainable, they're more coachable. They take coaching cues better a lot of the time. Jared and I on the channel have trained lots of female, very high level athletes. They're like, hey, try to hip tilt like this. I'm like, okay, got it. And they try to fix it right away. Whereas for men, they're like, yeah, but like the way I've learned it. Shut up, bro, motherfucker. You don't know shit. You can barely read. Do what we say. Just kidding. Namaste, everybody. But a lot of times men will give you that ego shit, where women are not as egotistical straight up, and certainly not in that way as expressed in the gym. And they just oftentimes can just be better coached. What do you get when PhD sports scientists collaborate with pro bodybuilders? The most effective muscle growth training app ever made. Get yours now. Another thing is, women naturally, and especially with coaching, can learn to prioritize their technique more than the I need more reps and more weight on the bar at all costs kind of shit that men tend to do. So if you coach a female and somehow, you go to Mars, for example, for 6 months, and you leave her with some programs. Sorry, there's no video on Mars. Zoom doesn't go that far. And you come back and you watch her training technique and you'll be like, damn, Betsy, apparently left in the 1950s, that's really good. That's almost exactly what we talked about. And some of it even looks better. You leave Jim Bob alone with that shit. He's going to be partial repping everything, heave-hoeing. It's going to be like he turned into Kyriakos Grizzly when you were fucking gone. If you don't know who that is, Google. Not at work. Not at work. At work. people might misunderstand. It's not pornography. Well, it really kind of is. Just Google it. Not at work. Let me know what you think. Comment below. Kyriakos Grizzly. It's going to be Scott, it's going to be a video about male versus female training differences. And like 90% of the comments are Kyriakos Grizzly references. Do you know who that is? Google. What are you doing? Let me know when you're done Googling. Yes, very large, very muscular, very fat, and very hairy. He's like the father I never had. In any case, females will go off plan less often. They're just better to coach in many ways. So this is like a really good thing. It's a cool thing. As far as how to work with people, I guess the advice here is opposite. If you're typically used to working with females as a coach and you start working with some males, you could be like, wow, what the fuck is this guy doing? He's debating me on shit. He's doing everything wrong. He's super interested in just PRing with fuck technique. So you might have to realign and be a bit more patient with males. That has certainly been my experience. All right, next difference. This one is more fundamental, but nonetheless something to consider. Initial size difference. Females are significantly smaller, especially in the upper body, but in the lower body as well. Even relative to their body weight, to males, they tend to have more body fat, less muscle. So they start out with less muscle. And the rate of gains initially that they make is typically about the same as males. But remember, it's a rate of gains based on percentage. So if you start at 100 pounds of muscle and you gain, 0.5% a week for the first whatever number of weeks, and if you start at 150 pounds of muscle and you gain 0.5%, you're actually gaining less if you start out smaller and more if you start out bigger. You know what I'm saying? Like the rich get richer, hashtag Marxism. That's definitely a joke. So there have been studies that have shown that at least for some time, females at least make the same relative gains. Now, what you're about to hear, I have to caveat as a personal hypothesis of mine, but nonetheless, I think it might carry some weight. I do believe that the available evidence on where people end up at the end of their careers, and we have a shitload of data on that because there's like 1 trillion female powerlifters, bodybuilders, all kinds of stuff. I think at some point past the beginner stage, females' rate of gains do reduce, and they actually gain slower than males. Otherwise, there's lots of males that started out between 100 and 120 pounds, 140 pounds when they started lifting. I'm one of them actually. And then they end up just getting to be 200 pounds plus, lean and fucking enormous. But for females, you almost never see that. Like a very jacked IFB Pro bodybuilder female weighs like 160, 170. This is some of the most jacked females in the world. And, some females actually start out pretty fucking jacked too. So I'm inclined to believe in either this will be embarrassing later and when I'm wrong, or the evidence will bear me out, fellas, several years later when people actually do the research on this directly. I think the female rate of gains slows down. Now, here's how to take this. Ladies, don't compare yourself to the males. Like, oh man, Ronnie, my fake husband in this, Ronnie, not Ronnie Coleman. Like, Ronnie just eats whatever and he just fucking gains muscle and I hate him and I hate his abs. I mean, I love him, but I love his abs too. But I hate him, you know what I mean? Fuck him, it's so easy for him. It's just going to be easier for guys to get jacked. Now, if you want to close the gap a little bit, just take the same testosterone exogenously that guys produce endogenously, which will turn you into a guy in every possible respect, including clitoral enlargement. You will be getting there, hair on your face and all that shit. So fuck that. So yeah, you're going to have a tougher time gaining, or another better way to see it probably is like your gains will be a little slower, which is totally cool because you know what I'm saying? Namaste, you gain at your own rate. And comparing yourself as a female to other males is about as pointless as comparing yourself as any human to any other human being. You just got to do the best with what you have. So that's all I'll say for that. Number 11 is related. I guess I said both of number 10 and 11 at the same time. So rate of gains females have probably lower. And for a variety of reasons, mostly because I think rate of gains caps off towards the end, females cannot get as big or as strong as males, even if they start from the same place on average, put in the same amount of work. Let me tell you exactly what I mean. If you find 100 males that weigh 100 pounds on average to begin with, and 100 females that weigh 100 pounds on average to begin with, and you have them in this world where they think it's the real world, but it's not. It's just one giant sports science experiment. I'm not secretly building a machine to do this, by the way. I will deny all accusations. 5 or 10 years later, the males will just get bigger and stronger than the females. I mean, one is that there's different genetics, man. Like your genes do fucking matter. I know, it's crazy. And also, like, males have more testosterone. Like, do you think steroids work? Yes, of course. Like, well, men are kind of on steroids all the time compared to females. So it's not rocket science. And again, the thing is, as a female, just understand that like shit is going to be a little bit less exciting for you on the muscle gain front. But females can still get super fucking jacked and really, really fucking strong, especially in the lower body, but in the upper body too. And so really, if you're a female, one of our 1.5 females that watches this channel, if you're training and you're fucking growing and you're making gains, just do that. And you're going to end up being like shitting on like 70% of the guys at the gym. I mean, that's fucking sweet. Like if you want to shit on 100% of the guys in the gym, robot limbs. You didn't think I was going to say that. Why would you have biological limbs? Robot limbs are better. And mark my words, as soon as robotic limbs are commercially available and objectively superior to conventional limbs, goodbye arms and legs. What an easy decision to make. In any case, a few more insights and to wrap it up. First of all of this is meant in good faith. Gender differences are real and they're not good or bad. They just are. And then we take what we have and we just try to do our best with it. Right? So I'm not trying to say like, oh, females are worse than males or males are worse than females. Like being egotistical sucks in the sense that it makes you make some bad decisions sometimes as a male, being more egotistical than a female. But also ego is what pushes people forward to do crazy shit, some of which is really impressive and really great accomplishments. Everything's kind of a yin and a yang. So that's kind of how I mean that. Another thing is all of what I said when I say females are better than or males are worse than or whatever, it's all statistical averages. It's two distributions are normally distributed like bell curves, and they sit like this next to each other, right? So some of that shit overlaps, some doesn't. So if you have a comment in the comments, which we always welcome, and also hello to our new subscribers if we got any. Think we got any new subscribers today? Scott the video guy? Well, half a subscriber. One guy subscribed and then he unsubscribed. But that's, hey, we got to look. We got to look. If you want to comment and say something like, well, I know this girl that's stronger than all the guys. Like, sweet. Stats 101. There's going to be, for every guy that thinks he's strong, there's Becca Swanson. Google Becca Swanson. We are all mortals in her wake. But there's also Brian Shaw. So it's all averages. So if there are exceptions, that's totally normal. Exceptions are expected, but averages are important because they allow you to have more realistic expectations of the world. And lastly, because females have a tougher time gaining muscle, et cetera, and it occurs slower, it's just unlikely that if you're a female, you're going to become a mass monster by accident. You know what I'm saying? If you're worried about being a mass monster as a lady, you might want to take a fewer trips to McDonald's at night. That's how that mass really gets going. JK, it's all love. Hey, yo, girl, if you have that McDonald's, pick me up a shake and come back to my crib. I'm married. We could have what's that called, Scott the video guy, when another person comes in? Menage a trois. Yo, Scott, are you French? We? No, I said you, not we. In any case, all right, folks, get out there, go mingle, you young kids, and your fun that you'll have, all the genders mixed together. And lastly, last thing, go to France. Get you a ticket to Paris one way, because you'll figure it out. Climb the Eiffel Tower, so to speak. Maybe be a spoke in the Eiffel Tower. I'll never forget that thing that happened to me. I agreed to it, I think. That's how I'll remember that. See you guys next time.